8-day History Channel expedition to Titanic is over. Phase 2 now begins, trying to unlock the secrets hidden in the steel.
I would say when the ship sank, that piece.
For the next 4 months, the team splits up.
I got to disagree with you on both ends of the deal.
Double bottom structure right now.
New members are added.
And I'm looking at the increased depth.
Working individually, conferring by phone and email, everyone struggles to analyze the pieces of double-bottom hull.
Was down in the mirror when we were actually looking at these.
That is totally awe-inspiring. That is the most significant piece of Titanic footage I've ever seen in my life.
In October, the first revelation emerges. Working from the underwater video, marine artist Ken Marshall creates architectural scale drawings of the pieces. The broken edges line up perfectly. These two hull sections were once one. Together, they account for almost 70 feet of Titanic's bottom, located just beneath and aft of the third funnel, right where she broke apart. These pieces are the best forensic evidence engineers and marine architects have ever had to understand the breakup.
The one thing this expedition did very well was go down and record the edges so we can see exactly what the shape of the steel at the moment it separated. And we can see places where things were pushed together, places where things were bent. And if we can go back and fit all of those pieces together, we may be able to sort of run the movie in reverse and come up with a very good explanation of exactly how the ship came apart.
In December, the team gathers at Woods Hole to discuss and debate the meaning of the double-bottom pieces.
Nice to meet you. Nice to put a face to the emails.
And everything else.
It's what they've all been working toward. A chance to reach initial conclusions about the breakup of Titanic.
Hi. What we've been working on is taking the 1985 and 1986 data that was collected.
Bill Lang begins.
This is a zoomed-in window. The stern is sitting right about here.
He's been working to map the debris field because he thinks it contains clues to the timeline of the disaster.
Okay, you've got 60 feet of keel member in these two pieces, roughly.
Bill is convinced the location of the two double-bottom pieces far to the east marks the moment when the breakup began.
Well, I mean, I think this is number one, okay, because number one to me is where the ship broke up. To me, this is the primary debris field associated with the ship.
You're saying these two double-bottom pieces were on their way to the bottom, while the bow and stern were still on the surface?
Yes. Yes. And that this point in time represents probably when the bow and stern started to separate, okay?
That means that's X marks the spot. Right above that
is where the ship broke.
Titanic's final moment was.
Somewhere here the ship died when the keel broke, because these are the keel
But
sections.
regardless of whether this is the actual spot, what caused the breakup? When did it start? How did it progress? And how did it determine the fate of the passengers? Since the breakup was confirmed in 1985, most Titanic researchers have come to believe it began just before the final plunge. According to this theory, Titanic reached a high angle, over 30 degrees, and the weight of the unsupported stern caused the structure to fail, cracking from the top down. Though it had to be terrifying, passengers would have known that the end was near. The ship was starting down, and in moments, they would be in the water.
Well, when I first started reviewing the videos and the data that the History Channel expedition brought back, the only thing I could conclude was...
But to Roger Long, the expedition's findings suggest the timing of the breakup may have been different, and the angle shallower.
The steel doesn't lie. It doesn't protect reputations, it doesn't have false memories, it never forgets. And as we've looked at the steel, no one thing, but all these little indicators seem to point to the shallower angle.
We all agree that the stern broke off because it was lifted, and the weight of the water and the weight of the stern working against each other, the ship was being bent like this. And when you bend a long structure like a ship or a girder, the top of it stretches and gets longer, and the bottom gets pushed together. So you've got tension at the top and compression at the bottom, and somewhere in the middle...
Roger believes if the stern snapped off at a high angle, the edges of the break would be pulled apart at the top and pushed together or compressed at the bottom. But the broken edges of the upper decks of Titanic's bow section don't seem just to have pulled apart. They're mangled and bent steeply downward. And the edges of the double bottom that should be crushed and compressed instead appear cleanly broken off.
If it broke from this high angle, everything up the top side should be quite clean and straight, and all of the chaos and the jumbling and the crunching together should be down at the bottom. And we see exactly the opposite.
And furthermore, if it crashed off like in the movie, everything would have separated and we wouldn't have seen these evidence of all these pieces being mashed in on themselves and twisted and so forth. So the key point is that something interrupted the breakup.
Roger now thinks that the breakup began at a shallow angle, perhaps as little as 11 degrees, and progressed in 2 stages.
So what that means basically to me is that the inner bottom broke separately from the ship.
First, the upper structure fails, starts to crack. The crack stops at the double bottom, which is now all that's holding Titanic together. It starts to bend under the strain. Then the sides separate. The double bottom starts to fail. Tons of water pull the middle of the ship down, bending Titanic the other way. Upper decks are compressed and mangled together. The bow heads for the bottom. The stern is the last to sink.